Good afternoon and welcome to today's first virtual business to business workshop. I am Latanya Cooper, sourcing manager at FedEx, and I have the pleasure of introducing your workshop facilitator, Ms. Kathy Buckman Gibson. Ms. Gibson is president and CEO of Kbg Technologies, LLC, a Memphis, Tennessee-based distributor of a full range of chemical products, services, and technologies. Kbg Technologies is the only woman-owned specialty chemical business serving the water treatment market in the region and certified by the Mid-South Minority Business Council, and is uniquely positioned to provide customers with an opportunity to promote a diverse business and support local economic development initiatives. Kbg Technologies provide a comprehensive line of products and services tailored specifically to your company's water treatment needs and offers custom solutions to ensure your facility is operating reliably and at optimal efficiency while meeting all compliance standards. Advanced digital capabilities to monitor data-driven analytics and insights, combined with the technical expertise of our associates, allow Kbg Technologies to identify and address issues before they impact your company's operations. With a commitment to service, Kathy is active in church organizations and community initiatives with specific emphasis on early childhood education. She led the Greater Memphis Chamber of Commerce Early Childhood Education Moon Mission and supports Move Your Money to Memphis initiative. She has also served on the boards of notable organizations, including Girl Inc., United Way of the Mid-South, and the National Civil Rights Museum. Kathy holds an undergraduate degree from Duke University, an MD and JD from Emory University, and is a graduate of the General Management Program at Harvard Business School. Kathy and her husband, J.W. Gibson, have twin daughters. She enjoys boating, travel, reading, and great food and wine. Welcome, Gibson, and thank you for joining us today.
Latanya, thank you so very much for that warm welcome and introduction. I've got the pleasure of introducing our panel for today. And we've got three notable panelists to talk to us today about supply chain and some of the challenges that we are experiencing following that wonderful luncheon speaker from Mallory Alexander. I'm going to start with Carolyn Hardy. Carolyn is the Chief Strategy Officer for Industrial Sales Company of Memphis, along with a number of other roles that she has currently occupies and has occupied. Industrial Sales Company is an organization that diversified from being an electrical distributor to providing all types of MRO supplies. It supports both routine maintenance and new construction, and some of its suppliers and people that it distributes for include Procter & Gamble, Schneider Electric, and Philips Lighting. Carolyn, as I said, is very involved in many endeavors. She is an accomplished author with her recent publication of Look Up, 5 Principles for Intentional Leadership, which I highly recommend. She's also involved as a director for our Federal Reserve Bank of St. Louis, with SCORE, Methodist Le Bonheur Hospitals, and a host of other community endeavors. She is the founder of the Industrial Readiness Training Program at Southwest Tennessee Community College, which helps support our Memphis manufacturing companies. Welcome, Carolyn. We look forward to talking with you. Next, I've got the pleasure to introduce Pravin Thakur. He is the president and CEO of Universal Companies, Scaffolding and Equipment, which he founded in 1984 after a career with MLGW. It is a subsidiary of Universal Companies, and it's a supplier of a full line of scaffolding equipment and accessories to customers in North America, South America, Nigeria, and a number of other countries. Other product lines that they carry include utility castings, pole line hardware, other utility products, and parts for farm machinery, which is important here in our region. It was one of the first scaffold companies to begin conducting business in China back in 1989. In 2003, his company was named Manufacturer of the Year by the Mid-South Minority Business Council. Mr. Thacker holds a Bachelor of Science in Mechanical Engineering from CBU and an Executive MBA from the University of Memphis. Pravin, welcome today, and we look forward to talking with you as well. And last but not least, I have the pleasure of introducing Andy Davis. He serves as Vice President and Business Manager of Turner's Mid-South region, Turner Construction. He has overall management and performance responsibility to ensure that the Memphis office has access to all the resources it needs for success, which in the construction business these days is a bit challenging. So I look forward to hearing more about that. His leadership and commitment to Memphis have led the office to grow to more than 60 full-time employees and with a work volume of over $100 million a year. Turner Construction has been a great partner in our community in helping grow minority and women-owned businesses in the construction space, and we appreciate all that you've done in that regard. So Andy, welcome, and thank you for joining us today. I've got some questions that I'll start off with, but I hope that this can lead to some good conversation and questions from our audience, particularly following the interesting conversation we had during our luncheon speaker in terms of talking about what's happening in terms of trying to bring goods into the United States, as well as shipping goods to other parts of the world and some of the challenges associated with that. So please feel free to add to those comments and the conversation we did have at lunch. But Carolyn, I'm going to start with you, if I could. When you look at industrial sales and as a distributor of products, talk to us about what you have seen in terms of supply chain disruptions, in terms of being able to get products, and then what kind of solutions your company has been able to implement to try to continue to meet your customer needs.
Well, you know, Kathy, like everyone, it was a very complicated time for us. It just seemed like all of a sudden the brakes was placed on, you know, the work that we were doing. You know, we were supplying different manufacturers, hospitals, and so on around the city with their MRO needs. And all of a sudden, you know, after March 12th, it was like, you know, what are you going to do? Our customers did not initially need the typical MRO needs that we were supplying. They immediately shifted needing PPE, cleaning chemicals, and things that they couldn't get. Those weren't things that we were supplying to the customers initially. And so, you know, we got out there and formed some new relationships with new vendors to try to get the customers what they needed. They needed gloves, they needed gowns, they needed cleaning chemicals. And you asked what are some of the innovative things that we did. For example, some of the hand sanitizers that they needed, we have a manufacturing plant here in town. We immediately started bringing in, we brought in new equipment and we brought in bottles, caps, and so on, because I have relationships in the beverage world. And we immediately started producing hand sanitizer here at our manufacturing facility. We couldn't get our normal products at that manufacturing facility into Kroger's distribution system because Kroger's warehouses were locked up, as you all saw on TV. From our normal MRO products, we were going okay initially. And then about 2 or 3 months into the pandemic, to your point, our supply chain almost locked up. The items that our customers came to trust that we could get for them in 24 to 48 hours was taking 4 to 6 weeks. It was just absolutely ridiculous. And so customers would wait. If they needed something on Monday, they'd wait till Wednesday the week prior, and they thought they were going to get it on Monday, you know, like business as usual. So what we had to do to, you know, help our customers, we had to go seek new relationships that we had not worked with before. You know, we would, if we were supplying you with Baldor motors, you may have to accept another brand of motor that we could get right away. So we forged a lot of new relationships. The other thing that happened during this time period is that we became somewhat of a cash economy. These customers didn't want credit cards, believe it or not. They wanted cash and wanted wired to. And so we were wiring cash. So if you were a company that wasn't cash rich before the pandemic, chances are you weren't going to get your supplies. So we were wiring out, I mean, I was wiring 5, 10 wires a day. They wanted to make sure the money was there and then we could get the goods. They didn't want to pay that 3% transaction fee. We didn't even touch the credit cards. So for about 5 or 6 months, we were truly just sending cash out. I would tell you one of my
and Carolyn, obviously that changes your whole cycle, right? In terms of
it really does.
I mean, cycle, right?
Before, to your point, we had our distributors and our manufacturers that we were buying from. We would pay them on the 10th of the next month at the earliest. Well, instead, if I ordered it today, and then of course I got my money 30 days later, right?
Right.
And so your cash is out there 60 days. Well, now I'm paying, now these are my normal customers. So I'm paying cash for something today that my customer is getting their normal billing cycle. My customers refuse to do cash up front. And you didn't want to lose the customer, right? And so once we got through the pandemic, one of the challenges that some of my new learnings was, how do I maintain some of the new business that I was doing during the pandemic? During the pandemic, no one was price sensitive. You know that, right? If hand sanitizer cost $4 before the pandemic, they were willing to pay $12, $15, $20 for it. Well, I knew that after the pandemic, I had to become price competitive, which during the pandemic, I didn't have to worry about that. And so we actually forged new relationships towards the end of the pandemic with organizations like Procter & Gamble that there are now long-term relationships. So that if something like this happens again, A, we're prepared for it, but B, the new relationships that we forged when the price wasn't competitive, now we're actually working with those customers, Kathy, with competitive pricing. We became a distributor for Procter & Gamble because of the pandemic, okay? When I called them, I said, who's your distributor for this market? We found out that they didn't have a distributor in this market. And so we became that distributor. The new relationships that we forged during this time period, the challenge that we've seen is that they had contracts with other suppliers, and those contracts kicked back in after the pandemic and the supply chain became healthy again. We're hoping that when the RFQ goes out for these relationships, that we're able to participate in these relationships. But one of the things that we saw during the pandemic that was interesting, things that I would bring in on a container, which take 30 days, we weren't allowed to take 30 days anymore. So we were paying $20,000 to ship things to fly things over FedEx. And that flying over was a prepay again. Internationally, the FedEx or none of the companies would accept a credit card or your account that you had with them. You had to advance pay. And back to what you said again, Kathy. So I've got $20,000 out for this air freight, $30,000 out for this one. I'm being paid 60 days later for that. They're not paying me in a net 15 or net whatever. So it became a little bit complicated, but we survived.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of businesses wouldn't have the ability to tap into cash reserves like that. I think one of our previous speakers this morning talked about the importance of having cash reserves in this pandemic for the reasons you've highlighted. But
well,
so
I will tell you, Kathy, that one of the companies that I was affiliated with, a small partner, they went into the pandemic, I would say weak financially, and the pandemic took them out. Because if you're weak and you can't source your normal customers, and to your point, the PPE was, it was okay for companies who weren't in stress. But if you're a stress company, 2.5 times payroll wasn't going to pull you out of your rent, your mortgage, your equipment notes, and all that stuff.
Right. So importance of the balance sheet. So, yeah. So Pracker, if I could turn my attention to you and ask you about, I believe that you do import a number of your products and possibly export them as well. And can you just describe to us some of the challenges you have faced, and kind of, is that consistent with what we saw from our previous speaker over lunch, or have you had different experiences?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. First of all, Tom did absolutely incredible job providing the current picture of what's happening yesterday or the day before yesterday. One of we've been importing since 1986. We had a couple of factory and joint venture in Brazil. We have a lot of experience in Korea, India, China, Taiwan. We've been in China. We were the pioneer to manufacture scaffolding. And I'll just give you a little background and how we're dealing with the supply chain and why we're so successful still maintaining our supply chain. Maybe a little delay, like Tom said earlier, but one of the advantages we have, we pre-plan everything because the type of business we're in, you know, when we get an order for $6 million or 60, 70 trucks, we don't have time to get it from China. So they need it yesterday. Most of the refinery job, we do all industrial services, our scaffolding division. So we are always prepared to stock extremely somewhere around 20, 30, $35 million in inventory here in Memphis right here to become the global player in a scaffolding industry, because all the power plants, the refineries, steel mill, they don't have pre-planning. They got a job, there's something down, they want the products. So the reason I'm leading up to it to tell you how we deal with this. So fortunately, in our case, it's a huge advantage having inventory. But the challenge we are facing today that I think Tom said that like yesterday, I got 2 rates from a couple of companies, and they're 2 big Sino and OEC, and it's 23,500. Now you can get what they call non-priority is 17,000, but if you want a priority container, it's between 23,500 to 22,000. Now we do have some contract with some major carrier. We don't pay that much. So we're holding somewhere around 60 to 80 container in China. This is trying to tell you how we deal with supply chain. See, we're dealing with three elements right here. One is a tariff, which is 25% tariff on all steel product that we're bringing in. Second is 28% increase in our product that we buy from China. And then we used to pay, just give you, I did a little number while I was talking to Tom. We used to pay 8 cents a pound to deliver goods from China. Today we're paying 60 cents per pound. And then we were paying 12 cents a pound for aluminum product. Now we're paying $1.04. The way we're mitigating the supply chain is, A, we have a huge advantage because we stock a lot of material. So we have a bumper available to us to bring the material at a slow process. But one of the things that Tom suggested that is going to be a long-term impact. We see this for the last 35 years of dealing in international. It's a supply and demand. And I agree with you that if you look at it and what happened in 2019, we would keep buying. And then 2020, we're still buying at the much lower cost of material, no tariff. Mm-hmm. So in our business, it really helped. Now, the way we're dealing with the supply side of it, like Tom said earlier, it takes us 3 months to get merchandise. Normally it used to be 27 days. Like few containers sitting at Long Beach for over 30 days before they goes on a train, on a rail to come here. So fortunately that having the inventory control process and within our organization, which we have every week meetings or sometimes twice a week to manage our inventory control. And so currently we have slowed down our import because we really don't want to pay for merchandise at twice as much what normally, then we would not be able to compete against the India, the Mexican products and Canadian products. So what we do to deal with that, we do not pass all the costs to customers. So what we do is we kind of said, okay, we're going to lower the margin to deal with that. So we've been fortunate to have the capability of product at the older price, product at the newer price with tariffs 28% increase in steel prices, and then the cost of freight. So, you take freight multiplied by 10 times, that's just almost, not sustainable for business. Another advantage we have is we don't leverage nothing. We like this, I've noticed Carolyn brought issues up that she had to float money. Now our terms are 30 to 60 days. On top of that, we are holding the material in our storage here for 3 to 6 months. So, but having the cost of money much lower than financing it, that's a huge advantage to manage the supply side and also manage your business. And so fortunately, that was a business model from very beginning of this company. Small leverage, low leverage, do not leverage. If you can get away with it, you sleep better, don't have to fight bank all the time. So we've been our business model is we do not leverage anything. And we happen to be very lucky. Sometimes we used to have our account receivable up to $12 million. And we still can manage our business. So to answer your questions on the supply side of it, it's not going to get any better. And I think Carolyn, you're correct. The point I'm trying to make here is you can deal with this issue, but everything you're going to buying product for the next 6 to 8 months, you're not going to get it right away. Except you're dealing in a scaffolding business where we know what the projects are throughout the United States and North America and South America. That's how we manage our inventory. So I think managing inventory have helped us to deal with supply side of the business. There are some items that we are kind of taking a 6 month instead of having in 45 days. That's part of the cost of doing business.
Yeah, Thacker, that's part of what I've seen also in being able to keep my customers supplied from a chemical standpoint. Is I've had to invest in more inventory and keeping more inventory at customer sites, just because to account for some of the issues in terms of trying to get goods to a given site. And
one more
that I don't run them out of product.
One of the steps we do probably go more than anybody else, a lot of our competition. We coordinate our customer needs on a weekly basis. We also track big projects like the LNG project. It's just up in, we track that package for the last 6 years. And we supply 400 truckloads of material, 29 million pounds of scaffolding out of here in Memphis in 2018. We thought we were covered. But 2 LNG projects in Guantanamo and La Porte and all of them, it just took all our supplies. So the key thing is, fortunately, those days we didn't have a problem. 27 days, our material comes in Memphis. No delay, nowhere. And it's, it's that $2,700 a container. So, I mean, it's a challenge, but if you want to beat the supply chain right now, stock up the material, pre-plan, find out from the customer what the need's going to be. To me, that's really going to be able to sustain our business in Memphis. The biggest challenge we're dealing with the government right now that we have talked to administration 2 or 3 times, they don't care about the tariff. That's not their agenda. They don't realize that they're going to kill a lot of businesses in the U.S., small businesses, to pay 25% tariff, 28% steel cost, and the cost of steel bringing in from China. And also one other thing, these scaffolding can be produced in the U.S., but not just in time. There's not a company in the U.S. has the capability of producing 80, 90 truckloads of material.
So I do wonder if when we think about our manufacturing economy in the United States, whether we will start to see some shifts in terms of some new entrants into the marketplace, maybe for other type goods where there's easier to get into the marketplace. It's going to be interesting to see, but I'm not sure it's going to change anything in the near term.
No, it's going to change. Kathy, I'm glad bought. We are right now just bought the facility next to our neighbors. We are going to manufacture a lot of these products.
Are you?
That we
okay.
can't get it just in time. So we're gearing up for tooling and die.
Do it. Okay, great.
So the key thing is in certain part, because the government regulation doing and galvanizing at the scaffolding, but there's a lot of stamping part that we buy in China it's more economical to produce in the US right now. And we don't have to wait 90 to 120 days to get it. So we are producing so just setting up the manufacturing process as we speak. I've been involved all morning to setting up. So yeah, I think it's a good point. It's going to create
a great example.
Yeah, but the disadvantage we have, we can't get a worker anymore. At $20 an hour, just the common labor, we can't get anybody to come to work.
That's, I think we're all experiencing that challenge. And
this is tough right now. That we have a couple of manpower companies supply our workforces. They don't have any. They can't get anybody to come here.
Yeah. So, Andy, thank you for your patience as we've had conversations with our other panelists, but talk to us a little bit about construction. We know that it is a very busy industry right now, and that everything we're hearing is that there's a lot going on in construction. So how have you seen your industry impacted over the last 12 months in this pandemic and supply chain issues with that?
Yeah, and this is the #1 topic when we get together in our industry. I think every industry is feeling the same thing that we are, for sure. It's no different than what has been talked about here today. I will elaborate a little bit on, the construction industry and some of the specifics around it. I mean, we've had a number of different things that have impacted our industry. Semiconductors, getting certain products, materials, we see that impacting the auto industry, right? The auto industry isn't making as many cars, so cars stay on longer, which impacts the scrap of vehicles that is getting put in there, which raises the cost of steel. So it's this one thing impacts another thing. Another example is the Texas winters that we had, right? Where there was resin facilities that they got shut down for several months due to the fact of ice damage that happened in their facilities. And that impacted a number of manufacturers. We're still feeling it today in the roofers and the roofing industry. Right now, you cannot hold a price. Our subcontractors cannot get material locked in on bid day. They don't even know when they're going to receive the material. And so our industry hasn't felt that as long as I've been in, and from anybody that I know that's even been longer, that they're saying that we've never experienced this kind of stuff. Recent jobs where we're getting pricing from the sub, they're like, I got wire pricing for 24 hours before it goes in the concrete. We can't make a commitment on delivery. We're looking at 9-month delivery delays on structural steel and curtain wall with glazing that goes on exteriors. Windows are out there as much as 9 months as well. So if you have a quick project, you have something you want to move fast, it has an impact. It's been a perfect storm when you think about all the things that have happened, right? I mean, COVID kind of helped escalate a lot of different things. For Memphis, you think about the warehousing that has just been booming, right? And the number of projects. From a construction standpoint, we've actually had pretty healthy market here in Memphis, because the investment that is going into that, because now products need to be stored, they need the inventory. Suppliers are looking at how can they mitigate their challenges with supply chain, which is opening more warehouses. Well, that takes a huge demand. Amazon, their huge investment that's happening across the country. And all of those things have led into it. Data centers, you think about the technology and how we communicate, right? We're on a Teams call today. We're not in person. That ability to do that means they need more data centers built across the US. That's raising the cost of construction and supply chain. The other thing that is, I think as we move through the rest of this year, we're going to see a little bit of this settling out. We've already talked about coming across from customs. You got something going in, it takes a lot longer because of containers. The cost of those have increased. Those are all driving prices. But the other thing that I think that we're going to start seeing a lot more that we're going to continue to feel is the labor pressure. Number of people in 2008, 2009, when we had the last downturn, there were so many people that left the industry and never came back in the construction trades. And we're going to feel, I think, that same course. And then on top of it, we have everybody feeling it, not just the construction industry or maybe a few industries. Everybody is having the sense of labor, and how do you deal with it? It's not a matter of, hey, can I put more hours and work people overtime? It's I can't even get the people to come in to do the job or have the skill set. So all of those things have created this perfect storm that we're dealing with today, that we're continuing to work through, that we're trying to be challenged. And I think that those things have caused the industry, and I didn't even get into wood. We've seen what wood prices have, and that has everybody being at home doing projects around their house on top of a big residential boom. I think I've heard that we're way underestimated on the number of houses in the country that are out there, and a number of builders or, you know, business is great, they just can't get the material or they can't get the people to get the jobs done. So all of those things, how do you work through that? What's the ways that you can do it? I think there's a couple of different things that you can focus on. And what Turner has focused on is, one, you got to stay in tune with the market. We are a pretty large company, so we have the ability to leverage a lot of different regions across the United States. We also have a lot of partnerships with key suppliers. So we're on routine calls with Nucor. We're on routine calls with a number of different folks, Caterpillar, you name it. We're probably talking to them on a routine basis to say, hey, what are you seeing? What's bothering you? And gathering that data and information. You know, if you're a small contractor, a trade contractor, and you're focused on one trade, there's a couple of different ways I would say focus around that. One would be is be able to look into associations that maybe are aligned with you, get partnerships with them because they can help inform you and give you the information that you need to be able to do it. But for us, it's about keeping our finger on the pulse, being able to understand that supply chain. And I'll give you one example, and then I'll just wrap up, of how having somebody early and engaged working with a team in construction is so critical. We're building this Liberty Park Sports Flex project with the city, and we've got some pretty big trusses with some pretty big size steel members that have to expand over there. And we were at a point to where in March, we were going to see a $600,000 increase to the project. Pretty substantial increase if we did not get the steel placed by order placed by a certain day. Well, we weren't to a point to where we had everything finalized, but because we were there in the pre-construction, working with the project team, working with the city, we were able to get authorization from the city to go ahead and place the order for that steel, get that steel in the thing so it gets here in September when it's supposed to be here, and also be able to avoid that $600,000 escalation. So conversations, communications, understanding when your product needs to be there, I think is another mechanism of being able to help manage and some of the things that we're trying to do.
Great, thank you, Andy. For those who are listening, feel free to put questions in the Q&A section on your screen, and we'll get to them here as we continue to have conversation. But I'm going to throw this open to everyone in terms of when you think back over the last 12 to 15 months, have you tapped into automation or technology or data analytics in a way that kind of has helped address some of the challenges you've faced in your supply chain process?
Yes, we have, matter of fact, first of all, we're thinking out of the box. We're not at the normal mode of doing business, you know, how. And what we did is we did what we call optimization of inventory control. And we have allowed the time frame for each inventory control that when we're going to run out, what's the time involved. So we have developed a source in India. We're working right now in Mexico to cut the time down. So yeah, we put in a lot of new things to our technology to constantly get these numbers from our controllers, our couple of employees that does export import, and they have developed this new tools for us to make it specifically for me to make these decisions, you know. So it is costing a little extra money to bring this inventory, but it's helping us to control for 3 months from now, 6 months from now. We're projecting $20 million sales in November and the next year in January. So we want to make sure we fulfill those orders, because, you know, we're working more with customer and constantly in contact with customers on weekly basis, sometimes daily basis, what their needs are, what the projects are coming, because right now is over 1 million square feet at the mall. it's in Pennsylvania. They're going to need a lot of scaffolding, you know. So we constantly have implemented a process using technology, computers, to give us data and then fulfill our inventory management control.
And I've heard all
thinking out of the box is a huge thing. Just get rid of the norm business process. Like Andy said, it's not normal or anything anymore.
Right.
The COVID-19 have really created the labor shortage. This is which really hurt us. And then we also implemented a lot of robot welding systems to cut our costs in Asia. So we have invested a lot of money in the robot and automated manufacturing, which is unusual in China, very popular in Japan, US, and Germany, Europe. We're implementing for the last year and a half. And we kind of saw this coming from the COVID-19 impact. We probably saw that in June and July last year, and it's all have become reality.
So what I've heard all three of y'all talk about is to be resilient, to really have a good understanding of the needs of your customer and how important that now is more so than ever, so that you can help manage some of these disruptions and challenges in the supply chain process, right? And do it smartly and be able to make good decisions around that. So I hear that.
Yeah, I think Andy made a good comment saying tune with the market. That's really a key word. It's very important. You've got to stay in more focus now.
Yeah, agreed. So thank you.
Yes.
What about you, Andy? Any opportunities that you've been able to use with technology or automation that have helped you in your processes?
You know, from a technology standpoint, I don't know if there's anything that's technology based. What I do think that we see is there is this drive towards our industry has been prefabrication and trying to figure ways to deal with the labor shortage. And I think now with the material shortage on top of that, we're looking for how we can innovate, right? How do we simplify maybe the building process, which is very complex because every project is a little bit different. They're typically not identical. Every designer, every owner wants something just a little bit different than everybody else. And that's understandable, but how can you get some of the similarities and try to create some synergies around that? And I think there's a little bit more focus around that with two fronts. One is the supply demand that we're in, so trying to be creative of how do you come up with stuff that is easily and accessible. Secondly is how do you deal with the labor and the challenge of having quality labor to do the work that you need done.
Great. Carolyn? You're on mute.
What I've seen from the manufacturing standpoint, even in my own manufacturing company, we were using a lot of people, temps, and manual labor. Like Harvin said earlier, you're paying $20 an hour. So we've met with equipment vendors in the last couple of months, where we were throwing 20 people at a project just to package materials for us. We're already talking to suppliers to build us equipment. It's going to take 10 months to build that equipment, but if at $20 an hour, the return on investment, which was not there prior to COVID, the return on investment is absolutely astounding at $20 an hour. So we are now talking about equipment that will, instead of using 20 people, I need one person to run that machine. And if you're running 24 hours a day, you've saved, 57 people, 57 man hours. Now here's a challenge from a long-term standpoint. Harvin was saying the world will never be the same. He's right. There's 12 million people that are currently unemployed that were employed prior to COVID. If all the manufacturers are out there looking for people, looking for automation, to replace the people the way we are, at some point within the next 12 months to 24 months, those 12 million people will never be needed again. Those jobs will be permanently lost. And I will tell you, in manufacturing, that is what is happening. I still track what goes on the brewery side. And one of the challenges they had, they bought a very expensive piece of machinery 2 years ago, and they were running that machinery, 7 by 24. And then COVID hit and they started running every other week because they couldn't get enough people. Well, at some point, what's going to happen is that, again, they're going to take it to the next level of automation. And those jobs that are currently paying, they were already paying $20 an hour, again, are lost forever. So we're looking at more automation as well that will replace the unskilled labor that's now costing us $20, $25 an hour. And the return on investment is absolutely amazing.
But you're right, Carolyn, it does create a real question and challenge for our community around lost jobs, and how do we take people who are still unemployed or underemployed and really help shift them in terms of skill sets, in terms of where we need people, et cetera. It's going to be a real challenge, I think, for our community in that regard. And I know you've been very much involved in workforce development, so it has created and will create some additional issues. Let me ask all of y'all this question too, because I think that you've probably had some experience on different ends of it. But when you think about your experiences in working with minority and women-owned businesses, what skill sets do you think we need to really focus on developing to be able to compete with majority companies, to compete and be on more level playing fields, et cetera? Those things that you think that we should focus on as we develop as organizations.
I was reading an article that I thought was absolutely amazing. It talked about why women minorities were struggling to compete. And one of the number one items, forget about financial, okay? Because even financial, if you don't have the same challenges, you will still have the one challenge that they mentioned, which was the social network. It just says that women minority does not have the social network that majority businesses have. And what that means is that if you're a part of a social network, and I think I consider myself part of Andy's social network. Either that or I get on his nerves. Andy, don't say which. But you've got to have that social network. I just don't think that women minorities have the social network. And that what that network is willing to do, they're willing to work with you in spite of. I run into construction projects with other GCs that's already selected their electrical supplier. Okay. I was chasing one project, and I'm very persistent. You ask what skills you have to have: persistence and patience. You have to have both. Okay. You have to be persistent that you don't give up, but you have to be patient because it's going to take time. Andy was talking about earlier that, you got to be aware of projects years in advance. Andy will tell you, I show up at projects that I know that the dirt's not going to be turned anytime soon, but I've got to be aware of that project. So I'll show up at meetings. I'm there listening, making sure that as that project progresses and it gets to a bid stage, I'm there for it. A lot of times the women minorities don't have the time. It's not just the financials, but they're doing so many things that they can't show up at all those things. They can't spend that amount of time. But Kathy, we've got to somehow, that whole inclusive environment, they've got to let us in, because it's not a matter of all the time being competitive. It's a matter of fact that I'm not part of their social network. And I will tell you, if I put that at the top, what's my number one item for my company is not financial. My company is that I'm not part of the social network.
That's a really good point, Carolyn.
And I want to just add on to that. I think she's absolutely right. I mean, relationships drive a lot of things, right? And the ability to be able to connect and understand. We talk about having relationships with suppliers, so when the product's coming and you can deal with it when it's known, right? And if you never have a relationship with your supplier, they're going to focus on other people that are staying connected to them. When we talk about our minority community and being able to elevate our minority and women-owned businesses in our market, right? We have to think also as maybe a large employer or a large contractor, how we look at how we focus on that. And so it takes both. We need people wanting to connect to us, but we also need to reach down, I guess you could say, in some ways, and find that bond. And so what we've tried to do over the last, I'd say 12 months to really focus on is now, how do we even become more intentional? We felt like we were pretty intentional anyways, but there's more we can do. And now we're not looking at just one minority partner as a GC on a large job. Right. We're even going 2, 3. How do we connect maybe a couple to be there? We are lucky enough to be doing the Obama Center in Chicago, and we were actually selected by 5 minority firms in Chicago that chose Turner Construction to be their partner. And through that relationship has fostered into other projects with some of those people, even here in Memphis, in Atlanta, in Nashville now. It's connecting them to where now we have contractors that may be focused in one region to expand out and become national players. So it is about relationships. It's about that social network. It's about connecting and being able to be intentional from both sides. I think it takes both parties to make it successful.
Thank you, Andy. Pracker, do you have anything to add to the conversation in terms of skill sets that women and minority-owned businesses might really focus on building and enhancing?
Recommendation is to keep trying. And just as you start out of the garage and become one of the #1 or #2 company in North America to supply scalpel. So, I mean, you have to keep trying. You can't give up. I see her point in a lot of side, but at the same time, you got to keep trying. And like Andy said, I mean, our business, we are not the cheapest scaffold supplier to these multi-billion-dollar company, but our relationship with them is so strong from the guy in the field to all the way to the president of the company. So you got to develop, and I think, you know, Carolyn is right 100%. I think when you develop a network, that's how you're going to build your business base and good foundation.
So building networks, being able to listen, to have good, strong voice of customer that helps you make decisions and manage your supply chain better. And then the other thing I heard from all of y'all is having a strong balance sheet can be important, particularly when there's uncertainty in the marketplace, when we find ourselves in a pandemic like we did this past year, where there was a great deal of uncertainty. Having a strong balance sheet helps you weather the storm and helps you get through those ups and downs and being resilient and doing what you have to do to continue and to grow your business. So thank you so much, everyone, for your comments and your thoughts and contributions to this conversation. I will, again, open it up to questions. If any of our audience has questions you'd like to ask of these panelists, please feel free to put it into the Q&A section. Or I think there's also maybe a way for you to raise your hand and ask a question. If not, I'll thank all the panelists again for your words of wisdom and sharing your experiences. Don't hesitate, anybody who's interested in this topic, there is a hot topic session tomorrow afternoon around supply chain disruption. So please feel free to drop in on that and we'll continue the conversation. So thank you, Andy, Carolyn, Pracker. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kathy. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.